Come on. There we go. I was like, the camera wasn't kicking on, and I didn't check it before I queued up. Sorry about that. Anyways, we're back with another Monday. Started relatively on time today. Things have been going a little crazier, as all Mondays are. Our Mondays are our busiest day, so if you guys have any sort of like delay in getting a reply from our team, they'll usually get caught up around like 2 or 3 o'clock. So anyways, this is another Ask Tim stream. We do these every Monday at 4 p.m. Central Time, Wednesday at 2 p.m. Central Time, and you guys can ask questions about your FDM 3D printers in chat. It doesn't have to be about our products. It can be general questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Now, we do have a Discord server that's linked below, and there's a channel called Livestream, which I have up right now, and we'll go ahead and be able to get images and links if you guys share them in that Discord channel. So, because YouTube does not allow us to post links or share images, so I can actually pull them up and share them with on screen, so then we can work through your issues. And as with most of the Ask Tim streams, I do have some randomness to go over. As you can see, I have the Chiron here, and we've begun plugging away at this. And the main thing that stood in the way of us doing stuff with this machine was this little guy here. This is the little adapter PCB, if you see here. And they use this to interface with their I think they call it the Tri-Gorilla board. It's a board they've used in many other machines. It's actually a pretty decent board. It's got socketed drivers. It's got socketed drivers, a ATmega 2560, so the larger of the 8-bit processor. So a very capable board. Yes, it's 8-bit, but still a decent board. It'll still print, and Marlin still supports it, so might as well do stuff with it. The only downside, because they did use this board, is it's a proprietary form factor, and there's really no drop-in replacement for it. Now, you could go through and hack up the case with a Dremel and print adapters and other stuff. But I'm all about, getting the most out of the life of stuff we have here and being able to retrofit and do upgrades. Now, this touchscreen, which is floating around here somewhere, I quickly gave up on it when there's no USB port. It's right here. There's no SD port, I should say. There is a USB that pops up as like a mass storage device. But I can't find really anything about this screen on here. It's not a D-Win. It looks to be an in-house design that Anycubic made, or they contracted out to make. And it's using a pen tablet chip, which is a fairly standard touchscreen chip. But again, just like all the other touchscreens, it communicates over serial, so there's only so much stuff it can do. And I spent some time, unless I missed something, and you guys want to, post a link. I haven't found any like community-made firmware for the screen to see if it can be extended to use Marlin more. But yeah, I'm just giving up on it. So this is the stock housing here, and you can see it just mounts with 2 M4 bolts and 2 T-nuts. The screen bolts into here, and this has a cover on it. I've already got a V1 of a LCD mount, so bolts up in the same manner. It uses the 2 existing screws that come with the Chiron, and this will just bolt in the stock location right here on the front of the printer. Now, the only thing with this is I was going to go a little crazy and make, an adapter PCB like this, but with all the delays on parts these days, with, I don't even know what the delay is anymore. There's delays on freaking everything. I figured let's keep this conversion simple, and I posted an update on our news site, and I also sent out on our email list. I'm going to start doing that as well when we post updates like I did with the Chiron. We're also sending that out to our email list. But the easiest way, sometimes keep it simple. So, ooh, that's loud. Now let this heavy bed slam. But I will show you guys here just some simple DuPont jumpers, and knowing where to plug things in, into what allows us to bypass the little circuit board they have, so we can actually get the EXP1 and 2 headers, because this board does have EXP1 and 2 headers, which is what these LCDs use, accessible to us, so we can actually use them with an LCD. I just need to change this camera back to autofocus. There we go, and now I can switch over, and I can show you guys what I'm talking about here. So if you can see here, and I've already tested this does work. So we have this ribbon cable here, which primarily goes to the hot end. It does actually jump down to this lower PCB right here. So this connector goes down and plugs in right here to this breakout, and then it goes up to the harness. So there's some motor connections that jump here too. But basically what we're pulling off of this harness here is we're giving it 5 volt and ground, and then we're pulling the X end stop signal wire and the temperature, the hot end temperature signal wire. And there's one other one that's escaping me right now. I have to look at our, hang on. I have to look at our post. This is why I documented it so I don't forget. I did this a couple days ago. I think it was Saturday, Sunday. It was a weekend thing. I was talking to Bill about it because I have his Chiron. I was like, you know what? I just need to dig this thing out and do it. What did I pull out here? So the X end stop, the E thermistor, oh, and the right Z stop. So yeah, I was gonna say, I thought there were 3 signal pins. So we have 3 signal pins connecting here. So we got the X and X end stop, and then the right Z end stop, and then we have the wire here for the thermistor. So with a couple of jumper wires, how many did I use here? Let's see, 1, 2, we got 5, 6, 7 little jumper wires. This is our bed thermistor here. So this originally plugged in right here to this port, and then this plugged in up top here, and then the other one here is for the touchscreen, and this is for the SD. You can see here. So this SD slot will no longer be used once we get this conversion done. It will use the one that's on the LCD itself. The LCD actually has a built-in SD slot, as you can see here. So this will be the one that's used once this conversion is done. So I'll put together a video showing how to make these connections, and this is super simple. As you can see here, the little DuPont, these are male to female DuPonts. These press nicely into the little JST connector here, and it works really well. So something simple, it'll be inexpensive, and then once the LCD is converted, we can have Unified 2 on here, and then we're also going to be doing some stuff with the EasyABL as well. And I'm going to be doing something a little different because normally EasyABL replaces your Z end stop. This one has 2 end stops on the Z, and it also independently drives both the Z motors. So what we can do with the EasyABL in place on the printer is not only get auto bed leveling, but we can also use it to level the gantry because this machine does have dual Z end stops and dual Z motors. I'm going to see if it makes sense to retain the dual Z end stops in use. Once the EasyABL is on there, I am going to have the dual Z end stops and dual Z motor supported in the firmware. So if you're not using the EasyABL, you can do that. And then the EasyABL is just going to interface with one of the I/O pins here. So we can, again, take some little DuPonts. If we look here, hopefully this will focus. If we look here, we got plenty of end stop inputs freed up here. You can see here just the X minus is used and the Z minus. So this is for X end stop, and this is for the right Z end stop. And we can actually put our EasyABL right onto the Z plus here, and you can see this little block diagram here. You see it says S, G, and V on the right or left side there. That means signal, ground, and the VCC. So we'd basically just need to use the S and G pins on the Z plus. And again, I'm going to document all this. It seems complicated, as I'm talking about it, but it actually really isn't. It's just a matter of plugging stuff in, and we'll have the firmware set up. So as long as you follow our connection guide, plug this into here and that into there, you'll just be able to upload the firmware and, use it. So, but if you guys are curious about the more technical details, and if you want, I've also shared the internal images that I made here for the breakout board. I actually made a couple different versions. So this is just the connectors and where they go to on the actual Chiron board itself. And then I have here where I've mapped out which pin goes to where. So this is from that little ribbon cable and where it's jumping to. So basically with this information, you can kind of cross-reference and see where everything's going here. And this is what I use to figure out where I'm jumping where. And just for shits and giggles, I went ahead and added a layout showing you guys where the touch LCD connects. You can see it interfaces with the reset pin here, and then you got your TX and your RX pins. So they're actually using the Y min and the Y max pins as TX and RX pins to talk to the stock LCD, which is interesting. Basically you can use you can use whatever UART pins, and I'd be willing to bet those are one of the second UARTs available on the ATmega 2560. Because if I recall correctly, hey, enough. Sorry, hang on. Because if I recall correctly, the ATmega 2560 actually has two UARTs. Usually the first one's hooked up to your USB to serial converter on the board, and then there's a second one free. So I'm willing to bet that these pins are going to the second UART. So, but if you want to read up on the details, and here's a little quick picture I snapped of my little bodge job with the wires, you can see where we're at. So we should hopefully have all this ready to go in a couple of weeks here. I have to finish updating Unified 2 to the new Marlin code base, which was 2082 as of last week, but now 209's out. So it's just a continual catch up of trying to update our code to the latest Marlin, but Marlin keeps releasing new releases. So I'm gonna focus on getting ours up to 209, and then get it up to date there. The problem right now and why it's taking so long is the difference from 2072, which is what we're on currently, to 208, and then subsequently 2082 came out. There's such a big gap because I think 2072 came out in October, and the 208 release came out about a month ago. So there's a huge gap. So there's a lot of code changes. So there's just a lot of stuff to merge in. It's not as simple as, oh, let's just update a couple files, make sure it compiles. We got to update a lot of files. Change variable names and make sure it compiles. So it takes a lot of time because we have to check for every single board configuration we have firmware for and every single model, and it takes a while. So anyways, that's enough of my rambling. I think I covered everything so far. The other thing I do want to say is that we do have a big announcement, and the Wednesday stream got canned just because I was out of it, and it wasn't worth keeping up. It was really bad. But I will reiterate that we are going to be carrying coax filament. We just placed a large order with them, and we will be stocking coax PLA and certain colors of ABS. We did a selection of what I thought would be, good colors that people would actually buy, and so we did a large order, and we should have coax filament in our shop in about a week and a half. So anyways, let's get on and see. Hopefully you guys have some questions while I've been sitting here talking about the Chiron. And I saw Nemo Griff asking, yes, there will be a video detailing how to make the connections. So you're gonna connect your Chiron with the jumper wires the same exact way that ours is here, so that way when you upload the firmware, everything works. So I'm not gonna be like, here's some diagrams, figure out where to go. No, we're gonna show you plug this in here, that in there, etc. So but anyways, let's see. So sorry, I got a million notifications going off. There's some stuff going on with my grandma right now that my mom was texting us. So anyways, let's try to get through this stream. Let's see if people have any questions here. You guys better post the questions while I was talking about the Chiron. You guys had plenty of time. That was what, like 10 minutes? So there should be questions in here from you guys in chat. So let's see here. No, Tom, like I said, contrary to popular belief, my t-shirt selection is not planned. It's whatever I grabbed out of the top of my drawer for that day. The only time I actually think about what I'm wearing is if I'm going to go actually out in the yard and get dirty, and it's like, do I want to get this shirt dirty or not? So, but like, I'd say like 90% of my wardrobe is 3D printing shirts, which most are dirty right now. I got to do laundry tonight. Justin has the first question. He said, I'm having problems with Octopi. I have to keep resetting the keygen to, I have to keep resetting the keygen to log in through the command prompt. I'm assuming you mean SSH. In order to get Kira to print through it. How do I fix this issue? Honestly, I'm not sure. I would start with a fresh image though on your Pi and see if that has any effect on it. Honestly, I don't have enough information. It sounds like a more fairly detailed issue that I have not encountered yet, so I can't be of much help there. But I would start first, if you're just banging your head against the wall, I don't know what you're trying to do with Cura. I don't use Cura with Octoprint. I usually slice my G-code, save to my computer, and then upload it directly to Octoprint. S3D is what I use here to slice, and that generates G-code files. So just naturally, I save the G-code files and then I upload them to the Raspberry Pi. Jay Smallwood, how much does EasyABL weigh compared to the BL Touch? They're pretty close. I don't know how much a BL Touch weighs because I haven't weighed them, but I can tell you how much our probe weighs, and if you figure out how much a BL Touch weighs, you can do a comparison. They're not much. I have here EasyABL FAQ product page. Our 18 millimeter is around 0.9 ounces with its with the two nuts that hold it on, and the 12 millimeter is about 0.45 ounces with its two included nuts and the adapter rings. So they don't weigh much at all. If you're expecting to go, if you're trying to cut down weight and you're concerned about how much the BL Touch weighs versus ours, you're not going to see a print quality difference between a BL Touch or ours, if that's what you're getting at. It's such a small weight difference that, you know, there's other stuff that you can look at to slim down on your Hotend to try to save weight. So, let's see here. David Arms. Oh, wait, hang on. I'll read David Arms. I'm coming back to Connie's question here. So, David Armstrong saying he has a Sunlu S8. It crashed turning on the heat bed and shut off when the nozzle starts to heat. What's the possible cause for this? The most common cause for a printer shutting off when you tell it to heat is that the voltage switch on the power supply is not set correctly. Now, on most power supplies, now there are some that don't have it. These are generalizations. I'm going to pull up a picture here of our power supply and show you guys the voltage selection switch. Where is it? Power supplies. There we go. And I will screen share here with you. So if you look here on the side of the power supply, you see this little switch? They will 99.9%, when you buy them, even if you buy them in the US, they will typically come set to 230 volts. And this is because if you plug a printer or a power supply that's set to 230 volts into a 115/110 outlet, whatever you want to refer to it as, US voltage, it's just not going to run correctly, versus if you have it the other way around, where you send them out and they're set to the 115 and you send them out to a 230 volt country, bad things happen. But you want to just check and make sure that your power switch is set to the 115 if you're in the US or Canada. And then basically outside of the US, it varies from what I understand, but it seems like most countries outside of the US and Canada use 220. So it really depends. I don't know what country you're in, but in general, it's either be the 115 or 230 volt. And most power supplies have a switch. There are some ones that are auto switching, but most power supplies have a little switch to set the input voltage. So if you have your voltage, like if I have a printer here that's set to 230, it will probably turn on and power up and maybe even move the motors. But as soon as you put a load on the power supply, it's going to drop and reset because it's not set to the correct input voltage. So, and if as far as I remember, the Sunlow S8 does have a voltage switch on it. So I would double check that. I believe it's on the rear because the power supply is in the front enclosure on that machine. It should be on the rear of that whole assembly. So apparently I got dumped. Both dogs got dumped out here on me. So Connie and Dave asked, are you going to MURPH? So TH3D is not going to be displaying at MURPH. I wasn't able to get enough people to help with the booths. We had originally paid for 2 booths for the 2020 MURPH, which obviously we all know got canceled. And this new one just seems like it's kind of going to be all over the place. And I don't have our new Easy boards ready. I don't have a ton of product to vend. So it wasn't worth us, between the lack of product and the lack of staff that was willing to come out to the event, we just decided to roll our sponsorship over to next year. I will be there on Saturday, probably for most of the day, along with a couple other people. Joe from Project R3D will be there. He is actually setting up a booth, but we're just rolling our sponsorship over to 2022. And I'm just going to come there and hang out. So if you guys are around and you're at the event, you can ping me on Discord if you're there and want to meet up. But otherwise, I'll be around. I'll be wearing TH3 swag. I don't know if I'll be there Friday. Probably not Friday. We're having a little cookout here for our staff. But then Saturday, I'll definitely be there Saturday. So, let's see. Vince asked about a layer fan question. He says he's got a FISEC spider. He custom made an IDEX printer. You got a lot of free time on your hands, man. He said the only problem is this parts filling fan only kicks on at 100%. Below that, it doesn't run. So it sounds like you have a fan that's not happy with the PWM signal. There is a PWM, like a slower PWM setting within Marlin. We have a feature called Fan Fix in our firmware, and I'm just cross-referencing to look up what that actually turns on in terms of what Marlin's concerned about, because it's a couple. I think it changes one variable and enables another. So hang on, Fan Fix. So you would want to set you want to enable Fan Soft PWM for an option, and then you set your soft PWM scale to a 1. I'll post that since you're in Discord. I will post that because Discord will let me post actual code and it will look pretty. So I will go ahead and just post that in there, and you can check that out. So yeah, you want to basically slow down the PWM frequency. Some fans, the electronics on them just freak out and won't spin the fan if you are sending a very fast PWM signal. Some work fine, some don't. One way to get around that is to slow down how fast the PWM is actually operating at, and that'll usually get you pretty good control over the fan. So, Tommy, how are we doing with the Easy board? We're moving into testing for the V2, which we have processors for. That's a problem with the V1. We can't get processors. Don't know when we're going to have processors for the V1, so it looks we're putting all our eggs in the V2 basket to get that out, and that will be the single extruder one, and then depending on how stock availability is, we might push forward with the dual. The problem is all this supply issue with the processors and drivers and capacitors and literally, well, basically every part we're having supply issues on. We got to kind of focus on the product that's going to actually, move the quickest, because it's really killing us right now that we have no Easy boards, because they are a big part of our sales. And we haven't had them for months. It sucks. So, there we go. Chat jumped. Look at its rain. BL Touch is 0.81 ounces. Okay, so the ours is 0.9 with the nuts. The BL Touch is 0.81. Our 12 millimeter sensor is actually 0.45. So, the 18 millimeter is a little bit heavier. We're by 0.09 ounces, and then our 12 millimeter is 0.36. Did I math correctly? 0.36 heavier? Or 0.36 lighter ounces? Either way, they're not going to make a difference. Let's see here. I'm going back trying to figure out where I was. We had answered a question about MURPH, and then David about his Sunlow and the power supply. So, all right, I'm back on topic here. The Easy board. David, please, if you guys are asking questions, please do not post the same question multiple times. If you do, you will be hidden from the channel and your question will not be answered. It's very rude. We will find your questions. So, will we be doing a firmware update on the SVO3 like we did for Ender 3 Max? Yes, we have to get the Unified 2 updated to the new Marlin base before we can add new printers. That's the holdup right now. So, and Headley is asking, people talk about all-metal Hotends. Do these still have PTFE tube in them? Is Prusa MK3 considered an all-metal Hotend? So the first part of your question, no. You will still have PTFE usually to feed the filament, but the PTFE, what makes a Hotend all-metal is when there's no PTFE in the melt zone, meaning the PTFE does not extend down into the actual heater block itself. It's above the transition zone between the heat break. Let me show you. My little models come in handy once again. Let me show you. So here's an example of an all-metal Hotend. Okay, so this is like what the Prusa uses. Prusa uses the V6. So you've got this transition zone here. and then you've got your heater block, and this is a cutaway version, and you have our PTFE tube. So the PTFE tube, if you look, stops right here. So if I hold this up, it's only going down to about right there in the heat break. Okay, this is what an all metal looks like. Now, we do actually carry heat breaks for the V6 style that have it where the PTFE can pass all the way down into this. This is called your melt zone. And all metal hot ends do not have, I was like, the dogs are making noise. All metal hot ends do not have the PTFE going into the melt zone. Now, I have another cutaway model here of a Creality hot end, which is one that does not have all metal. And you'll see how that looks once I show you right here. So this is what a PTFE lined heat, this is what a PTFE lined hot end setup looks like. You see the PTFE tube right here goes all the way down and touches the back of the nozzle. So if your PTFE goes all the way down through the transition zone, so there's still a transition zone, it's just really thin, and it goes all the way down. This is a PTFE lined hot end. This is not an all metal hot end. So hopefully that explains it. So in general, and what we've been doing, I used to swap out a lot of our machines to all metals. I will still swap some out if I'm changing the hot end entirely. But you can also go with something like our tough tube, which is a higher temp tubing, because your stock PTFE tubing will start getting kind of chunky and breaking apart around 240C, like that clear milky white stuff. That's just cheap tubing. And it works fine for PLA, but you start getting up into PETG and ABS temperatures, it starts to break down. Tubing like our tough tubing not only has a tighter tolerance, so it guides it smoother and more accurately, but it also resists temperatures better. So you can continually print with our tough tubing up to 275C. So if you have a Creality hot end where it goes in the melt zone, you want to have a little more headroom for your temperature. If you take out the stock white stuff and put in our tough tubing, you now can go up to 275C here, because this tubing is actually going to withstand the higher temperatures, even with normal everyday use. So that's what we do. Like we have a bunch of Ender 3s that are kitted out with a bunch of our upgrades. They still have the stock hot ends, and we just changed the tubing out, and they've been going strong for 2 years with the tubing in there. And we run those hot ends about 245C or higher to print ABS. And I haven't had any issues with the tubing breaking down even after multiple years of heavy usage. So it's a very nice upgrade. Since we're talking about the all metal hot ends, I will say, and this is with any brand, whether it's ours or Micro Swiss or E3D, or Slice, whatever you want to call it, if you have an all metal hot end, you're printing PLA is more prone in general to stick to the hot end. So when you do a retract, the PLA will want to stick to the inside of that metal heat break, and then you can get what's called a jam. Now, the clog, it's actually a jam where it retracts and the filament sticks as it's cooling because it's pulled back by your extruder, and you'll get a jam. So that's one reason I've started moving more towards doing the PTFE lined hot ends with our tubing in place, because we don't print at temperatures that exceed that. Hang on. I did not realize I was having both dogs dumped on me, and he was quiet this entire time before I started streaming. As soon as I started streaming, we got to find the squeaky toys every single time. And Mondays, I don't have the tolerance for it. But anyways, yeah, all metal hot ends are going to be more prone to jam with PLA, regardless of the brand. The best thing to do that I found to get around them is when they're new, before you actually put filament through them, I'll take that dry PTFE lubricant and spray it through the heat break and let it cool, let it like dry, and that'll give it a lining on the inside. The other thing you can do is print what's called a filament oiler, which is just a little case that's got a hole on either side that you can put a little sponge or a piece of towel or something in there, and you put a couple drops of canola oil in there, and that will lightly lubricate the outside of the filament, which will then get into the actual heat break, and it'll end up like seasoning the hot end. If you've ever cooked with cast iron, it's the same idea. Cast iron, as you cook with it, the oils from the foods build up a nice non-stick coating on the pan, so the food doesn't stick to it. So the more you use it and you take care of it, the more non-stick it gets just naturally. It's the same kind of idea with all metal hot ends. So Now, there are different qualities of heat breaks, like there's your standard steel heat breaks, and there's also titanium ones. We carry the titanium upgrade ones for a bunch of different hot ends, and the titanium ones are usually less prone to sticking, and the insides are usually polished to a higher quality than your standard steel ones that might come with like a standard V6 type setup, or with your printer. So, but in terms of the guy that I was answering this question for, N. Headley, was asked about the Prusa. I believe Prusa uses an all metal, and I remember there being some controversy over the heat break because I guess they don't use an actual E3D heat break. It's like Prusa's own modified design. There's something with the taper for their MMU to work better. But anyways, there we go. I'll stop talking about hot ends for a while. Anyways, let's see here. What's the next question here? I should have mixed myself up some energy before I started this because I am dragging ass today. So talking about stuff really tires me out, I guess. Let's see. Oh, Lightspeed is saying they have a modified heat break from E3D. Okay, so E3D makes it. I just know it's not a standard V6 heat break. It's something that they specifically have E3D make for their printers that use those hot ends. Anyways, let's see. There's your question, so I'm back at where I need to go with chat. CPret's asking if a Raspberry Pi 4 gig will be fine for Octopi. Absolutely. You can run Octoprint on a 1 gigabyte Raspberry Pi 3B. Anything more than a gig is overkill. The only reason we use 4 gig boards in our Pi kits is one, for future proofing in case there is a plugin or something that needs more RAM, it's there. But mainly availability, because we weren't actually able to get any of the 1 gigs or 2 gigs for the longest time. We've always been able to get the 4 gigs, and it seems to be those are the ones they produce the most of. So I wanted to make sure we had standardized on boards that we're actually going to be able to get. So, but it's not going to hurt anything to have more memory than you actually need. So let's see here. I'm just there it goes. I was waiting for chat to jump. It does it every time. I don't know why chat jumps. Anybody have any info on that? So let's see here. Okay, Connie Dave is asking, tell me about the original Ender 3 Pro Magnetic Bed losing magnetism at 100. I'm upgrading the printer to handle ABS better. I have the TH3D flex plate and need to know when to install it. So it's very simple. The stock magnets that come with most machines, I'm saying most machines, in my experience, have been all the ones I've dealt with that are Chinese machines, because there might be some out there that have high temp magnets on them. I would assume if they do, they would advertise it. But in general, the ones that Creality uses, they work okay for PLA, but the problem is because they are a lower quality magnet, because, you know, they're including it with the printer, it's better than nothing. But it starts to get very, very weak at 80, 90, 100 degrees Celsius. I start to see some sort of strength fade around the 60 to 70 degree mark. Our magnetic sheets that we sell are rated up to 140C, and it's really simple to swap out. You just peel the old one off, get all the adhesive off. You can use like Goo Gone or WD-40 or acetone to get any of the adhesive from the stock magnetic mat that came with the printer, and then you clean that all off, make it all nice. I usually wipe it down with isopropyl alcohol after I get all the adhesive off from the stock magnet, and then I'll apply the magnet from us on top of there. So it's that simple. Take off the old one, clean off the bed, and put the new one on. So let's see here. Mini Blaze is looking at the Ender 3 V2. He's seen feedback saying you have to update the firmware of the box, and there's a newer board for that. So as far as I know, the Ender 3 V2s are still shipping with the V422 boards with the Trinamic drivers. The only issue I'm aware of on those boards is some people have reported that the drivers stop responding because they're overheating, and they'll have to add additional cooling. We have been using our Ender 3 V2 with its stock board in our print farm. We haven't had that issue. I'm willing to bet it could be hit and miss. wouldn't surprise me that Creality is using lower copper count on those boards. Aside from like cutting the board in half and getting it under a microscope, it's really hard to tell how much copper they use. But knowing Creality, it's probably just a 2-layer PCB, maybe a 4-layer. But I highly doubt that they're using the higher copper count to dissipate the heat like Trinamic likes. But as for updating the firmware out of the box, that printer's firmware works out of the box. It has thermal protection. I wouldn't say you need to update it out of the box. We do have firmware available on our site for free for the Ender 3 V2, but you don't have to. You don't have to update it. You know, if you're just starting out, it'll work just fine. I think he's got to go outside, so I'm gonna ping Samantha and see if she can let him out, because we've got another 30 minutes on the stream. Anyways, I know Samantha's here. Her car's here. So, let's see. Fly says, I've got stock Ender 3v2 with the TH3 metal extruder. What filament printable this machine would give me the most mechanical strength? Has to be pretty stiff but not brittle, even possible. I would say PETG. Because assuming if it's stock, you probably don't have an enclosure. I would definitely say PETG. Give PETG a try, because PETG is stiff, but it's definitely not brittle. The one downside I will say with PETG that it will be frustrating, so I'm going to give you the heads up, is PETG is a material that likes to string. So just accept that you'll probably have to do some post-processing, take a heat gun, wave it past the little strings, and they'll just kind of ball up, and you can flick them off. But I would give PETG a shot. PETG is a good material to print. You don't need an enclosure with it. You usually want to run a bed temperature of about 80 degrees Celsius and a print temp of anywhere from 230 to 240 degrees Celsius. So you did say you have a stock Ender 3 aside from changing out the extruder. I would highly recommend staying under 235 for PETG. Some PETGs I found do like higher temperatures, like 240 plus. But keep in mind, if you're still using that stock PTFE tube, like we talked about that earlier, it's going to start degrading, and you can start getting little pieces where it breaks off, and then it clogs your nozzle, and that's not fun. So, but definitely give PETG a shot. Coex carries PETG. I actually have some rolls from them because I actually have not tried their PETG yet. I've printed a ton of their PLA, a ton of their ABS. Tried their PETG out. Or we'll try their PETG out once we get them in. I ordered about 6 different rolls to play with. If it's anything like their other stuff, I know it's going to be great. But in terms of PETG I've actually personally printed that I've been very happy with, you can check out Atomic. Atomic is a company here in Indiana. It's about an hour and a half from us, and they make really great filament overall, and I've printed their PETG, and their PETG prints beautifully. So, Nemo Griff is asking, speaking of Hotends, have you ever used any of the heat breaks that have the PTFE line embedded in them? Yes, and I hate them. They're so bad. And they're usually not a standard diameter of PTFE, so if that stock lining gets, hosed or breaks down, you got to get a whole new heat break or try to hunt down what weird size PTFE tubing they used in it. God, I hate those. I think the ANETs had that. And there were some really crappy V6 clones I got off AliExpress before we actually started carrying and sourcing our own, where it looked like an all metal heat break, but it had this razor thin piece of PTFE tube in the melt zone. And it drove me nuts because that little piece would get damaged all the time, especially going to higher temps, but they sold it as an all metal, and I guess they were just hoping people wouldn't notice that there's this tiny little piece of PTFE in there. Yeah, I hate them. Stay away from heat breaks that have the PTFE embedded in them. It's so bad. So let's see. Am I hyped about the Ender 7 reveal in 2 days? I think Creality, and I saw somebody say this. I clicked on Joel's video, and as soon as I clicked on, someone said, why does Creality keep putting out new printers every other month instead of focusing on a couple of models? And I could not agree with that more. That's all there is to it. They're going to keep releasing new printers, and people are going to keep buying them because it's a new model. I really wish they would just hone in on a couple of printers and make some really awesome machines that just don't have any glaring issues, instead of like literally making new models every other month, it seems. Yeah, I saw Joel had issues with his. I didn't see what the issues were, but I saw it, like I skipped to the end and it was like, oh, we'll have to contact Creality and see what's going on. Yeah, so let's see. Oh yeah, when we were talking, I see Tor's chat here. We were talking about the stock magnets. Tor posted a picture in our support chat. He's like, oh, I see. Must be why we tell people to replace the magnets, because he didn't replace his, and he was printing a large part on the EasyFlex, and the stock magnet couldn't hold it down, so it just started pulling up. So, yep. Off axis. I believe that's Marcel. Is that you, or is that you, Marcel? I think off axis is Marcel. I haven't chatted with you in a while. We need to get on some random streams. I'm like 99% sure off axis 3D is Marcel. Let's see here. Lightspeed, yes. I personally am going to MURPH. TH3D is not actually setting up a booth at MURPH. We're going to roll over our sponsorship to next year. I just don't think it's going to be worth it for us to go. And I also don't have enough people to man the 2 booths. So, and I don't have a ton of product to bring either. So, let's see here. Corey Frank, I bought the EasyAble Pro for E16. I'm having an issue with the prints. It's like the extruder is pushing enough filament, but I calibrate the extruder and everything is fine. Any tips? Check and see if you turn on the MM3 extrusion option. If you're using our firmware, that's permanently disabled, but I would check and see if you calibrate your extruder and that's calibrated correctly, like you're getting the 100 millimeters when you tell it to extrude 100. We actually have a tool on our website that's a calibration tool that walks you through calibrating your extruder and the steps per millimeter for your extruder motor itself. If that's fine, I would highly recommend just change your nozzle out. You could have a partial clog, and I used to try to sit there and declog the nozzles. In a pinch, I will try to declog them, and like 90% of the time, it's fine. But if I've been banging my head against the wall and extrusion issue on a printer, I'll just change the nozzle out, and that will usually solve the problem, because there could be just a ton of stuff in there, and you know, you're able to put those little needles up there, and they're great. And if you only have a little bit, those are usually enough to dislodge it, and then it'll get pushed out with the filament. But if you got a lot of stuff caked up in there, you're just going to be fighting with it forever. Just swap the nozzle out and see if your issue goes away. You know, just keep it simple. Nozzles are, you know, most nozzles are cheap. You know, even if you have a nicer nozzle in there, put in a cheap one and see, just to rule out if you're having a partial clog. So, Tom's asking, what our titanium heat break for the Creality fit a Micro Swiss heat sink? I don't believe so. I believe Micro Swiss uses their own style of heat breaks, and I think theirs are already titanium. Don't quote me on that. I want to say their stock all metal heat breaks are titanium. They could be steel. Someone else in chat probably knows. I don't sell Micro Swiss or used stuff. And the only reason I don't use Micro Swiss is if I want all metal, I'm just going to put ours on there because they're more cost effective, and in my opinion, they print better than the stock Hotends. Also more nozzle options. I'm looking at their site. I want to say theirs is a titanium heat break. I'm looking here. Yeah, it is. The heat break, it says right here, the thermal heat break is made from a grade 5 titanium alloy to provide excellent thermal isolation between the heater and the cooling block. So yeah, that's already got titanium. Don't waste your money. Plus our heat break will not fit in the Micro Swiss ones, only the stock Creality ones. So let's see here. I'm just looking for questions. I'm scrolling down. Oh yeah, off axis is Marcel. I thought so. I recognize the name. Michael Mearsman, since you talked about your heat breaks earlier, what hot end do you have in your WAN? How many and what type of heat break? So I have the stock hot end with our tubing. Like I was talking earlier, you know, unless I want to really upgrade something, I usually will use the stock hot ends if I can change the tubing out all the way into the melt zone. And then basically, I'll run the stock Hotends on most of our machines until we have a catastrophic failure with them. And at that point, then I'll put one of our Hotends on there. Or if I want to go with something like a high flow setup with like our Hotend with the high flow heater block and the volcano style nozzles, you know, but give it a try. It's because I look at it this way. If I've already changed the tubing out on a stock Hotend, I get some life out of it. And then the stock Hotend has an issue, I can take the stock Hotend off, put on one of our Hotends, clip the tube, and then I still can use the tubing that I just put on there without having to waste it. Because even on all metal printers, I still use our tubing, the tough tubing, because it's got the 1.9 millimeter internal diameter instead of the 2 to 2.2 millimeter that the stock white tubing is. I like having that tighter tolerance around my filament. It just gives me more accurate retracts, and it just extrudes it smoother because the tubing's a lot slicker. So, are we at the end of the questions? I think this is the last one so far. We got like 10 minutes left, so if you guys have other questions, post them now. XL2828 is asking, he said he's got an original Ender 3 with a 427 board. Well, okay, I don't know if you're saying it's all original because the 427 is an aftermarket board. But he's asking, he said, it's got the TH-ready firmware on there. It seems solid and reliable. Am I thinking right? And if it's not broke, don't fix it in terms of upgrades? Absolutely, man. I have like my standard loadout of upgrades that I'll do on a printer. It's usually our easy ABL. I'll change the tubing out for our tough tubing. And if it's got a plastic extruder, I'll switch it out to either our tough extruder or the all metal extruder. And then I'll solid mount the bed. I'll get rid of the springs, put the solid mounts on there. That's like I'm pretty happy with this machine, and usually the easy flex plate. That's kind of my base thing. I run a lot of stock boards in our printers. 1, because they work. 2, I already have them. And 3, I also need printers to test our firmware on for the stock, for the stock board. So it just works out. But I used to, when I first started out, I would jump in, I'd get a new printer, I'd be like, I'm gonna do all these upgrades, I'm gonna change all this stuff, and it was great. And now I've done it all, and I'm kind of at the point where I know what I like on my machine. I know I like bed leveling. I know I like the flex plates. I know I like having the tough tube on there, and I know I don't want to deal with a plastic extruder. So those are kind of my key things that I do. And when things start breaking, like if the control board goes out, then maybe I'll turn it into a project and let's, shoehorn MKS in there, or let's put an easy board in there. I stop overhauling machines just for the sake of overhauling them instead of, making a project out of every single printer. Don't get me wrong. I have printers here that are absolutely projects. They all work now. But, take it easy and, figure out where your current printer is falling short. Don't just go and upgrade just because some guy on Facebook or Reddit told you that he bought this upgrade and made his printer 10 times better. The 9 times out of 10, they did that upgrade and they ended up fixing an issue that they didn't know they had in the process of doing another upgrade. So, that's that's my thought on it. Do whatever you guys want. But that's just me. JDM Models asking, does Unified 2 firmware for the Ender 3 V2 work on the VoxLab Aquila? It does not. That machine is kind of a can of worms because the company screwed the pooch on that board. That board has now shipped with 2 different processors. Well, the first batches seem to have shipped with a 512K STM32 F1 series processor, and the second batch, which is what I got, shipped with some knockoff STM32. It's not an actual STM processor, but it's a knockoff of an STM processor with only 256K memory. And why this is important and why I'm bringing this up is if you flash a 512K firmware on a 256K chip like that, it will usually flash. The problem is you could be flashing into bad memory, which could lead to a hard lock condition where your heaters are stuck on and the printer has no way to override that, which is very dangerous. So think about that. You can have thermal runaway protection enabled, but if the processor has hard locked because you're operating out of memory that's faulty, you're screwed. Unless you physically can go there and turn it off, or you have something like, like our easy plugs. If you're using those, like if you're printing over Octoprint, you have an easy plug, you can set up the Octoprint system where if it detects like a hard lock condition or the printer just straight up disconnects, you can have it kill the AC power. That would be a fail safe, but I wouldn't even rely on that. I do not like running 512K firmware on the 256K chips, and Big Tree Tech was doing that for a while on their release boards and telling people to do it, and had their stock firmware set up to do that. And the problem is people were getting hard lock conditions where their heaters were getting stuck on these boards, and it's very dangerous. So basically for the VoxLab, we have to set up a separate build environment for that board. We have to set up a separate build environment in VS Code for that board to restrict it to 256K. But the firmware setup itself will be identical for the 512K STM and the 256K knockoff. But the difference is we want to make sure that it never goes over and compiles outside of that 256K memory, because what happens is when these companies make chips, you know, they have dies, and let's say that F1 die has 512K of memory, but not all the memory tested good. Let's say the first 256K block was good, the second 256K block was defective. So they'll bin that chip then as a 256K chip, and it will get sold as a 256K chip. The problem is they don't actually laser it off. Like Intel, when they make processors, they'll usually laser off the bad dies, and that's how you get like lower end processors like the i3s or the i5s, that kind of stuff. But in these, they don't seem to be doing that, because you can just flash right into that memory, and the processor's like, okay, and puts it in there and hopes it's good. But there's a reason that memory was marked bad, and that chip became a 256K chip instead of a 512K chip. So, yeah, it's annoying. Vatalib is asking, he's got an easy board. Is it typical for a printer to reboot, do a 5-second beep when installing the SD card? On some SD cards, it does cause the Marlin to hang, and then it restarts to reinitialize the board. Yeah, it'll do it, and it'll do a long beep when you start the printer. That beep you're hearing when the EasyBoard powers on is before everything's initialized. That pin is just kind of floating in a high state, so the beeper emits a sound. And then when the firmware boots, it pulls it down, and it no longer makes a noise. So Alan is asking, is it automatic bed leveling or automatic bed compensation? I think it's compensation unless you're tramming to actually level the bed. I believe the technical term, everybody just calls it auto bed leveling because that's what it's kind of been known as, but it's technically incorrect because it's not actually leveling your bed. So you are correct. It's compensating. It's using the Z-axis to compensate for your printer bed not being perfectly leveled or flat. So I would call it compensation, but you're like, you know, what sounds better, an auto bed compensation kit or auto bed leveling? You know, because the reality is once you get an ABL kit on your printer, you don't have to level the bed. So that's kind of the thought process, I guess. So I try not to think about it too much because it does slightly bother me that it's referred to as that. But, you know, if I called it, our easy ABC, that kind of sounds funny. The easy auto bed compensation? I don't know. Anyways, no, I get what you're saying though. But yeah, so we are coming up on the hour mark. So, okay, Samantha took the dogs because they were getting on my nerves. I don't have any treats in my office, so that worked out. I will see you guys on the next stream. Keep an eye out for the Anycubic firmware and the conversion kit. If you are a Cult of TH3D member, I have been posting updates in the Cult of TH3D Discord channel with like little sneak peeks. So, and I will be, once I get all the LCD hardware done and I'm happy with it and I'm like, this is, ready for sale, I'm going to allow people who are Cult of TH3D members to get a discount on the first run of them so I can get feedback from you guys directly. So if you have a Chiron or you're a Cult of TH3D member, make sure to keep an eye on that Discord chat channel because that's why I'll be posting details. So if you're interested in converting your Chiron once I have everything all ironed out and have all the details ironed out, it'll probably be about a week and a half. That's where I'll be posting it. So give you guys kind of a little insider scoop and allow us to, send stuff out and test on a small sample size versus, let's just throw it out there and hope it works. We're not Big Tree Tech. So talk to you guys later. Hope you learned something. As always, happy printing.